Okay, so picture this. A world run by kings who answer to absolutely no one, except maybe God. A world with insane levels of inequality, where the life you were born into was pretty much the only life you were ever going to have. That was Europe in the 18th century. But something was brewing, a totally new way of thinking that was about to challenge, well, everything. Let's dive in and see what that was all about. All right, check out this map. Almost all of Europe was dominated by what we call absolute monarchies. That means a single ruler, a king, held all the power to make laws, to be the judge, to run the army, the whole shebang. And get this power wasn't just political. It was seen as a divine right, a power granted directly from God. So in theory, the king's authority was absolute, and you just didn't question it. So this political setup, it was propped up by a super rigid social structure, often called the Ancien Regime, or the Old Order. This was a world where society was sliced into strict divisions, and your place in that world was decided for you the moment you were born. And this table, wow, it just lays the inequality bare, doesn't it? On one hand, you had the clergy and the nobility, a teeny tiny fraction of the population. They had all these amazing privileges, like not having to pay most taxes. And then you had everybody else, the third estate. We're talking merchants, peasants, city workers, over 95% of the people. They had zero political power and had to pay for pretty much everything. Crazy, right? And here's the kicker. This whole system wasn't just based on tradition, it was sold as being God's will. So if you questioned this social order, you weren't just being rebel, you were seen as questioning God himself. That made the entire structure feel, well, unshakable, set in stone. But just when things seemed totally locked in place, something started to shift. A new revolutionary movement kicked off. It was a group of thinkers who basically said, hey, wait a minute, maybe tradition and because God said so aren't good enough reasons anymore. They believed in a new source of authority, the human mind itself. And they started asking this one simple but incredibly dangerous question. What if we used our own brains, logic, and reason to take a hard look at our world, our societies, our governments, and then build something better, something more fair? And that, right there, was the heart of the Enlightenment. It was all about using reason and critical thinking to push past old prejudices. The whole goal is right there in the name, to bring the light of reason into a world that they saw as being stuck in the darkness of ignorance and superstition. If the Enlightenment had a motto, it would be this Latin phrase from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, sapere aude. It means dare to know. Or, to put it another way, have the courage to use your own mind. It was a rallying cry for everyone to start thinking for themselves. So, what happens when a whole generation starts daring to know? Well, you get an earthquake of ideas. They started chipping away at the very foundations of that old world, one idea at a time. Let's break down the core arguments that really shook things up. This table is perfect. It's like a head-to-head battle. On one side, absolute monarchy. On the other, the Enlightenment's big new ideas. So monarchy says, all power to the king. The Enlightenment says, nope, let's split that power up. Monarchy says the king's power comes from God. The Enlightenment says, actually, power comes from the people. Subjects must obey? No, citizens have rights. One state religion? How about freedom and tolerance for all beliefs? It was a total clash of worldviews. Now, these weren't just ideas floating around in the air. They had champions. These brilliant and often pretty brave thinkers we call the philosophes. Let's meet a few of the heavy hitters and their world-changing arguments. First up, you've got Montesquieu. His big idea was simple but revolutionary. He argued that to stop any one person from becoming a tyrant, you had to divide the power of government. One group makes the laws, the legislative, another enforces them, the executive, and a third judges them, the judiciary. Sound familiar? It should. That idea became the blueprint for most modern democracies. Then there was Voltaire. This guy was a real firebrand. He was a tireless fighter for tolerance, freedom of speech, and a justice system that was actually just. He took on the big institutions, the church and the state, and called out their abuses left and right. His message was all about people helping each other and sharing knowledge, a direct challenge to the powers that wanted to keep everyone divided and in the dark. And maybe the most radical of them all was Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He dropped this bombshell of an idea called popular sovereignty. He basically said, forget the king. The ultimate power in any country belongs to the people, and only the people. In his view, a government was only legitimate if it followed the general will of the people it was governing.
Now, an idea is only powerful if people actually hear it, right? Well, these explosive ideas didn't stay locked up in some dusty old books. They spread like wildfire, creating a whole new public sphere where, for the first time, pretty much everything was up for debate.
So how did these ideas go viral in the 18th century? Well, people talked about them everywhere, in the fancy intellectual gatherings called salons, but also just in regular bustling coffee shops. You had cheap little pamphlets and flyers spreading the ideas to an even bigger audience. And since French was the international language back then, these books were being read in courts and cities all across Europe and beyond. And this is so important to get. This wasn't just a friendly chat over coffee. This was the intellectual gunpowder for the revolutions that were just around the corner. By questioning the very legitimacy of kings and the old social order, the Enlightenment was drawing up the blueprint for a completely new world. I mean, think about it. That simple call to dare to know led directly to the American and French revolutions. It shaped the very principles of liberty and equality that so many of us value today. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What are the widely held beliefs of our own time that are just waiting to be challenged by reason? And what could we discover if we too dared to know?